Good evening and welcome to this special 60-minute edition of Left, Right and Centre. I'm Sankit Upadhyay. A lot has been said with a lot of spin, doctoring, with a lot of running around and dramatics and theatrics as far as the drug racket or the drug bust in Bollywood is concerned. But let's just keep all of that aside and at least attempt to understand the story. And trust me, right here on NDTV, we will always attempt to explain the story first and then the opinion of our newsmakers and our guests. It's very important to understand the story first, the context. So on this show today, we'll first begin with the Bollywood drug net as the NCB is investigating, explained for the viewers, first of all. Everything else can follow. Joining the dots of the NCB probe right here in a very easy to understand explainer that is going to come up on the screen in just a short moment from now. And also on the show about 30 minutes from now, an extremely important byproduct of a discussion from this drug probe. If you see, all the investigations are pegged on leaked chats, leaked WhatsApp chats, which are easily available in the media. There is a whole angle of a media trial. But the point is, how easy is it, number one, to access these chats, and number two, to distribute them in the public? I think this is a very important discussion where a lot of people feel at this moment that perhaps privacy on the mobile phone could at best be called a myth. Is that really the case? How much should any of us worry? Because today it is investigating agencies and one can understand that because it's part of a probe. But what if this information were to be used by someone else, some blackmailer, simply because you carry your phone around all the time and it's become an extension of our personality? So these two issues we are going to discuss. Let's first quickly get you that explainer. Let's understand the story first before we choose or offer to comment. So a few days earlier, about a few weeks earlier in fact, we got you a simple explainer, a diagram to explain the dots or the jigsaw puzzle that the NCB has put together, which they are calling is a drug racket. This involved the arrest of Riya Chakravarti, her brother Shauvik Chakravarti, then some drug peddlers. These details are on your screen right now. Now we want to tell you today that since that day, since the 4th of September, what are the new developments that have happened? It's proving out to be an extremely complicated story. So it's easy to understand who are these people, these characters, and how has the NCB arrived at a conclusion, or at least is investigating that so and so could potentially be in the net. So let's take a look at those characters. So you had Sushant Singh. It was actually his death case which was being probed by multiple agencies, including the NCB, because there was a drugs angle involved. Then there was Riya Chakravarti. There is from her phone, once she was in the NCB net, there was a chat between her and Sushant Singh Rajput's manager, Jaya Saha. There was a chat between these two, which the NCB was able to lay its hands on. Now, who is Jaya Saha, you ask? As I said, it's a complicated story, so we are explaining one by one. Jaya Saha belongs to an agency called the Quan Talent Agency. She works for that agency, and there are certain chats which allegedly the Narcotics Control Bureau says has been recovered from her phone as well. Now, how does Shraddha Kapoor, actress Shraddha Kapoor, come into the mix? There is a drugs-related chat which allegedly the Narcotics Control Bureau has found between Shraddha Kapoor and Jaya Saha. That's why she has been called for question. Now there's another character, another person called Karishma Prakash. Who is she? She is a person who works for this Quan Talent Agency. She's also Deepika Padukone's manager, and there are some alleged drug chats between her and Deepika Padukone. So we'll come to the angle of Deepika Padukone a little later. So we have explained Sushant Singh, how this led to Riya Chakravarti, how that led to Jaya Saha, how that led to Shraddha Kapoor, and then Karishma Prakash. Now from Riya's phone and also during the investigation with Riya Chakravarti, the NCB claims that there are names that have cropped up, including Sara Ali Khan and Rakul Preet Singh, that Riya has allegedly named these two as having been associated with her as far as this drug net is concerned. Then Simon Khambata, who is this person? A fashion designer, friend of Riya Chakravarti. There are allegedly chats that have been found between Riya Chakravarti as well as Simon Khambata. And Simon was in touch with many famous Bollywood celebrities. So this is all part of the NCB probe. These details have been cross-verified and checked with senior officials of the NCB by my colleague Sunil Singh in Mumbai. And then Deepika Padukone's name, last but the most important. How has this name come in? So if you remember, we gave you the story and the mention of Karishma Prakash, who was from the Quant Talent Agency. She was also Deepika Padukone's manager. So there was a chat, a WhatsApp chat allegedly between Karishma Prakash, the manager, and Deepika Padukone. And in that, she asks allegedly a question, mal question mark, which means that she's asking for stuff which later allegedly is also referred to as hash. So that's, ladies and gentlemen, the context in which the investigation of the Narcotics Control Bureau is happening at this moment. They have called these actresses for questioning. Do know that legally, if you're called in for questioning, that does not mean or that does not imply guilt. You can be called in for questioning or for assistance in a particular case, and then you can be let off also. It's only if the investigating agency feels that your questioning is revealing that you are also complicit, can they move to the next step. So that's the factual position on this story. I thought that just in case people are interested in understanding what the complications of this case are, so they should know. So let's quickly put this to a discussion. I want to put this to a discussion as far as whether these people are villains or victims. What really and how exactly should they be looked at, and this Bollywood drug bust, where does it stand? So I've got Mr. Umakant Mishra, is the former Assistant Director of the Narcotics Control Bureau. A very noted actor, Dilip Tahil, is also with us, joining us from Mumbai. Thank you very much, Tahil Saab. We have Abhishek Tripathi, filmmaker and writer and a columnist, also joining us, former head of the social media and IT cell of Mumbai, BJP. Thank you very much, Abhishek. We also have Nupur Mehta, actress, joining us from Mumbai, and AKashdeep Sabir, actor, producer and director. He's also with us. In just a short moment, we'll also be joined in by Karuna Nandi. She's a senior advocate in the Supreme Court. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's an important discussion and must be had in the right perspective without a lot of spins or spin doctoring. We have to understand the facts first and then offer our comments. Now, Mr. Umakant Mishra, you're a former Assistant Director of the NCB. I want to begin with you, Mr. Mishra. How important it is right now to assert the fact that these actresses have been called in for questioning, which does not imply guilt. Mr. Mishra.
I didn't hear the last part. What did you say, which did not imply?
Mr. Mishra, I'm saying
Sanket,
that
I did not hear the last
important is
part.
it to... Can you hear me now, sir? Can you hear me, Mr. Mishra?
Yeah. I'm able to hear you.
Yeah, my question is, how important is it to mention and specify here that a questioning, if you are summoned for questioning, that does not automatically imply guilt. You could very well provide information to the NCB and then be let off.
Yeah, Sanket, I agree. You see, every criminal law starts with a reason to believe that an offense has been committed. You must understand this fact. Every criminal investigation starts with a reasonable belief that an offense has been committed. So now what we have been discussing and witnessing in media and the papers and whatever is coming to the public domain that certain drug charge electronic evidence has been uncovered, which points to the fact that an offense has been committed. So basically section 67 is basically a fact-finding mission, and basically the investigation will center around whether actually an offense has been committed or otherwise. So we need not read much into section 67 at this point of time. What basically will matter is how the investigation will proceed and how the people who are called are responding to the questions and the investigation, and how the other people concerned therewith respond to their depositions. You see, the drug chart, like you said, the drug chart mal hai kya? It doesn't mean anything. Yes, it doesn't mean anything. But if somebody says, okay, Amit ke haath bhej dun kya? Let's say. Now, if the actor who asked mal hai kya, and he says that no, it doesn't mean anything, and I didn't ask for drugs. But if Amit says that he has delivered drugs, then it becomes a kind of a dispute. Then it comes to the corroborating evidence, whether you see, in the investigation, text and the context, both are very important. We cannot disregard electronic evidence because it is primary evidence if the electronic equipment which contains that evidence is available. It is only if the primary evidence is not available, then the section 65B comes. If primary evidence is available, then it can be admissible under section 62 or the Evidence Act.
Mr. Mishra.
So,
Mr. Mishra,
yes.
these chats in itself, because right now it appears that a bulk of the NCB's investigation depends on these chats, which unfortunately are now in the public domain, being leaked by God knows who, perhaps someone from the NCB.
Right.
And there is a lot of comment on whether investigations must be proven in court and not in the media by way of these leaked chats.
Right.
But if the primary evidence are leaked chats, then how credible are they to be admissible in a court of law?
You see, Sanket, the question of leakage doesn't affect the quality of the evidence. Please remember that. You see, whether it is leaked, whether it compromises the investigation, that will be the most important point for NCB and for other agencies to consider. But that the primary evidence is leaked doesn't reduce its quality as far as admissibility as an evidence is concerned. Now, again coming to the drug chart. Drug chart per se may only indicate something pointing to an offense has been committed. But it has to be corroborated by other evidence, by other depositions of other persons. You see, as long as even I say, if you say that, okay, MD hai kya? Suppose MD means MDMA, that will also be a question. MD means MDMA. But whether it has been delivered, by whom, at what point of time, and whether it has been consumed and all these are points of investigation. So the mere fact that section 67 notice under the NDPS Act has been issued doesn't really mean anything. It is simply a fact-finding effort. Second, the other point I want to emphasize here is that as far as the tenor of the NCB investigation is concerned, it is only about the consumption.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Mishra, I'm going to come back to you in just a short moment. Karuna Nandi, Senior Advocate of the Supreme Court, is also with us. Do stay on with us, Mr. Mishra. I'm going to come back to you.
I will explain this point.
Dilip Tahil, I want to come to you now. Mr. Tahil, I'll come back to you, Mr. Mishra. I assure you we'll come back, but let's introduce or take the opening comments of each of our panelists. Dilip Tahil.
Thank you.
A lot has been said about, this being a cleanup. Of course, it all started as we have the facts right here in front of us. It all started with a probe in the death of Sushant Singh Rajput, and I don't think the manner in which the investigation is going on right now, it has anything or it has very little to do with Sushant Singh Rajput. Now, this has become some sort of a hydra-headed investigation into a drug cartel in Bollywood. How do you look at the manner in which the investigation is going on? Just off the top of your head, what do you think?
A very good evening to you, and thank you, Sanket, for giving us a background of this, and to Mr. Mishra for allowing us to understand how the NCB works. Allow me to take you back a little bit to the Sushant Singh Rajput investigation when it began, and it was alleged that it was not just suicide, it was murder. Now, this brings me to the point, I have full respect for the NCB, and they should make the investigation, so should everyone else. My issue is the journey between when a WhatsApp information is found and before that person comes to the NCB. The media has absolutely slandered reputations. They've had no evidence. It's all evidence with association, with suggestion. It is McCarthyism, which happened in Hollywood in the 1950s, whereby association people were criminalized. There was a direct attempt of throwing so much mud at somebody by the old adage that some of it will stick. And that is what has been happening from the start of this business, ever since it began with Mr. Sushant Singh Rajput. And that is my problem, that there are people coming onto channels whose opinion is being asked, who claim to be senior advocates and completely have a character assassination of Deepika Padukone without knowing her, dragging her father into this, who is a sports icon for people like me, who broke the glass ceiling, and channels that are running a conversation with Deepika Padukone and playing her song Dam Maro Dam in the background. There is an attack on the Indian film industry, and it is a vicious and a venomous attack, and it is planned, because this is all psychological hammering into the audience that these people, even though we were in conversation with them, they are villains, and the subcontext is playing all the time.
What is the purpose?
Dam Maro Dam
Tahil,
is playing right through the conversation. She's done 100 songs. The purpose is, this is a deliberate a deliberate attack on an industry, because I think nothing else could be found. The Riya Chakravarti also immediately was made into a gold digging, money laundering, then it became drugs, then dealing in drugs, then a drug addict, then a cartel joined up with ISI. So I'm trying to say that this has just gone completely the way the media has wanted to play this, in my opinion, and I'm talking over a period of several months. Not every single person in the media, but certain channels have absolutely, you know, it is the lowest form of journalism in my mind.
Sure. Okay. Nupur Mehta is also with us. Nupur Mehta, in just an earlier broadcast on our sister concern, NDTV India, you seem, okay, we'll go back to Nupur in just a short moment from now. Yes. Sure. Okay. AKashdeep, I want to come to you now. AKashdeep as well as Karuna Nandi, one by one. AKashdeep, would you agree with what Dilip Tahil is saying, or would you want to counter what he's saying?
No, I'm quite in agreement with what Dilip said, because I still don't understand that what is the purpose of this drug inquiry? Is it to find the people with a possible link to the deaths of Disha and Sushant, or is it a larger cleanup of the country? Because I don't think we needed a
no, but then it can be both also.
Yeah, but I'm
Mr.
saying
AKashdeep, it can actually be both also. An investigation can lead to something else.
Yeah, but Vishnu, are you then implying that it's an afterthought? What was the purpose of this inquiry? Sorry, Sanket. Sorry, I've been on so many debates. Sanket, then it seems it's an afterthought, right? So they came in for Sushant, and now they're doing a larger cleanup. See, we have nothing against those who consume drugs being punished, but I'm not, and I also don't want to go overboard and say it's a witch hunt. But if drugs are a problem, you needed a Sushant Singh to go away to realize that. And secondly, I'm not saying 10 or 20 stars. I am saying 10,000 people in Bollywood take drugs. That constitutes 0.15 or 0.2% of the 4-5 crore Indians who consume drugs. So 99.8% of this country of drug users, out of the drug users, that muck, that slack, that gutter, that gandagi is not being highlighted. I mean, drugs are such a problem. Wherever you point the torch, you're going to see muck. Right now, you're pointing it on Bollywood. I understand it came there because of Sushant, and that agencies don't have any particular individual axe to grind with Bollywood.
No, but then a counter argument to this is you got to make a start somewhere, and if it is Bollywood, see, cinema is a very powerful medium. So if it is happening in Bollywood, then it will have have a deep impact on the psychology of the country and perhaps send the right message across. I mean, this is just an argument from the other side. Mr. AKashdeep, do stay on with us. Abhishek Tripathi and Karuna Nandi continue to be with us. Karuna, before I come to you, a quick word from Mr. Tripathi. Mr. Tripathi, you have heard Dilip Tahil, you have heard Umakant Mishra, you have heard AKashdeep also. It's very clear, Mr. Tripathi, as of this moment, that a lot is being implied. Of course, the nature of the investigation is to doubt, but to imply guilt to a point where a smear campaign, slandering is going to take place and then form, and the accusation is that this is state-sponsored. How would you respond to this? That this is all happening under direction.
Yeah. Okay. I thank Mr. Umakant Mishra for making us understand the legality of how NCB works. But I completely negate, and I'm in disagreement with Mr. Dilip Tahil and Mr. AKashdeep Sabir has to say, my senior fellow from the industry. Unless and until, Sanketji, unless and until supposedly the #1 lead actress of our country, Deepika Padukone, had written, Mal hai kya, hash na no weed. This is very categorically written, what she wants to be delivered to her. If all these things had not been written, there would not have been a summon issued to them, and it's just a summon, they are not yet accused. So I don't understand, when they are such a big stars, their every news has been covered, all good news, all positive, all dramas that they do in public, all goodwill that they get, all the goodwill ambassadors they become to the health organizations and to so many organizations in the world. They are the youth icons of India. And what they are doing on personal life, and we get to know, and it is very important to get to know. Nobody is implying anything on anybody. The investigative agencies will do their work. The Indian courts of law will do their work. Then only we will come to know who is the culprit. But prima facie, if we get to see,
I think the point is very
negate.
different over here that Mr. Tahil was making. One is an implied guilt, right? And the other is an investigation. I think right now the point that Mr. Tahil seems to be making is implied guilt and a slander campaign at the behest of an establishment.
Exactly what I said, Sanketji. It will happen because you're getting so many goods also over the years. All those news, all those good
Okay, one moment. Mr. Tahil wants to come in. Dilip Tahil wants to come in. One moment. Yeah.
Abhishek, I also need to come in.
I want Mr. Abhishek Tripathi to please understand what I'm talking about. I am talking about guilt by association. This is an infringement of human rights. It is an infringement of human beings' legal rights that you assume guilt before it can be proven innocent. This has got nothing to do with reading mal on a thing or not reading mal. You cannot assume a person is guilty until before they're proven innocent. And this is what is happening in the media. I am talking about that journey from the WhatsApp line to the NCB. By the time that person comes to the NCP, they are branded guilty drug addicts whose livelihood should be taken away from them, like Mr. Tripathi is suggesting with his students. Ab main apne students ko kya bolunga? Tell your students the truth. People are innocent until they're proven guilty.
Okay.
And this is a human rights situation. You cannot assume guilt on conversation. And that is my point.
Sure. Okay, Karuna Nandi has not spoken. We are 22 minutes into the discussion. Very quickly, Karuna Nandi. No, one moment. Karuna, I'll give you time. In fact, we'll take a short break and come back with more comments. But before that, Karuna Nandi, I want to come to you. The legality of this. See, the point that is being made over here is that one must not be guilty by association. Also, questioning does not mean guilt. But at the same time, there is a probe going on, and for an agency, it is their very nature, because otherwise no probe can happen. It is their very nature to doubt and to see a person in doubt of an act so as to carry out their investigation. In the larger or a broader picture, how do you see the manner in which this investigation is going on? Because see, as far as Sushant Singh Rajput investigation is concerned, an ED, CBI and an NCB happened parallelly. And it's only this investigation which is moving forward, and many people argue they don't know where it is going. Karuna.
Like Mr. Tripathi, Mr. Tahil, I'm more comfortable being called Ms. Nandi or Karuna Nandi. Here's the thing. The NCB has to be hauled up if they have been making leaks. Because one thing is absolutely true, is that an investigation has to be sacrosanct. You can't have a complete circus going on every time you think you've discovered something. Secondly, the evidence that is in the public domain is something that some channels have claimed have come directly from the NCB. And it's not that the NCB, what the NCB has itself even allegedly is a common chat, which is also at the moment, according to me, hearsay evidence, right? Because they have a common chat where it says that the name is a particular person's name. All it's hearsay evidence at this stage. Thirdly, any person who is accused or is under investigation has the right not to self-incriminate. Therefore, even though Section 69 of the IT Act says that there is a right that the police has to decrypt or to request decryption and to say, ask for your phone and to say, let me decrypt the information on it. According to me, there is a constitutional right which is a much bigger right than that. And that is the right not to self-incriminate. It is Article 23. There is a challenge to Section 69 that's already going on in the Supreme Court, and that I think should be given due respect to. The entire enthusiasm that the BJP and its supporters seem to be showing in the cleanup of Bollywood is so misplaced when you look at what is being cleaned up. What allegedly is being cleaned up is the consumption of marijuana. Now, yes, it is still illegal. Yes, it is still a Schedule 1 drug. But let's see what it actually is. This is something that is currently the subject of a High Court petition where the Delhi High Court has issued notice to the central government saying, do you want to make it legal? In the state of Madhya Pradesh, in the state of Uttarakhand, this has been legalized for medical use, right? So let us be clear that when we think of a cleanup, kai gam hai zamane mein marijuana ke siwa. Because you know what? Today we have a aggression in Doklam, and where the Chinese are making huge strides against us. We have a huge farmers' protest and their livelihood being threatened because the taking away of the minimum support price. We have Parliament that has effectively been dismantled because bills are being passed by voice vote, and so a made-for-television selective leak with regard to top actors potentially consuming marijuana, honestly, should not be worth the time that we are even spending on it. And we should be spending our prime time, honestly, on something completely different.
Sure.
You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me stop for a short break at this moment, but
disagree with Karuna.
One moment. Mr. Mishra, Mr. Tahil, Abhishek Tripathi, AKashdeep Saver and Ms. Nandi. One moment. I'll have to stop for a short commercial break at this moment. I promise that when we come out of the break, we've allotted 8 more minutes for closing comments where you can agree and disagree with one another. Do stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. Let's quickly go back to our guest. I believe Mr. Mishra wanted to come in. Mr. Mishra, you wanted to come in?
Another 10 minutes. Yeah. I partly want to disagree with Mr. Tahil and Karuna. You see, the Supreme Court and the High Court umpteen times have held that the fundamental rights are not absolute. So, when the fundamental rights are not absolute, they have to be balanced with the interests of the society first. Second, I want to say the constitutional right is as regards not self-incriminating, that also may work to the disadvantage of the persons who are called in a drug investigation. NDPS Act has 3 presumptions which works against the people who are called. Let's say Deepika Padukone or whosoever they call, they choose to remain silent on the ground that it will self-incriminate them. That will work to their disadvantage. So it is best to cooperate and see that what is the truth that has prevailed. So the other thing is that the investigation and the leakage thereof are completely 2 different things. And by that you cannot say that it has been done at the behest of the central government or something. Everything is done according to statutory provisions, you see. So giving that as a meaning or a witch hunt, I don't think it's really reasonable. As I started my argument
Mr.
by
Mishra,
telling
don't you think that this is a very simplistic understanding of how the NCB works? How would you respond to criticism that the NCB had all the time in the world, even before Sushant Singh Rajput's death, to carry out this investigation? Surely drugs are not a phenomenon that have suddenly emerged in Bollywood post-June.
Sanket, you are not aware that NCB, organization like NCB and DRI, which has less than thousands of people, they are doing so wonderful jobs. It is because they are intelligence agencies, their work is not being in the media eye or the public eye. It is only because the Bollywood is in picture, that is why this 2-gram Caesar is playing havoc in our light. Let me tell you that. Because the lean and mean organized like NCB, they work with a very, very kind of a strong mandate to bust drugs, factories, international cooperation and everything. So they don't come into the small picture. It is only because ED has forwarded a certain drug chart with a drug angle that they have seized it. Let me ask you, let me explain the contrast. Bombay has 45,000 policemen. And NCB has only about, say, 50. Total staff number is 50.
Two guests want to come in at this moment. AKashdeep and Ms. Nandi want to come in. One moment, one by one. AKashdeep first.
Yeah, okay.
Do you stand in disagreement with what Mr. Mishra is saying?
Department, but I want to tell you one thing very clearly, that as a country, you will agree with me that we need to chase the suppliers because ultimately it will lead to the big fish and narco-terrorism funding will be caught. That I think deserves a national debate at prime time rather than Deepika, Shraddha, XYZ, which is what is happening. Not that you are making it happen, but this is happening. There are more than 10 million people who die because of smoking, out of which 1.5 million are passive smokers, helplessly dying. I mean, that is allowed to go with just a sticker saying smoking is injurious to health. And why did Deepika smoke? Did she smoke? Shraddha? This has become national headline. Sir, we need to get to the root. And when you say that the Narcotics Board is not doing it, how is this selective leakage happening? I'm not saying that you do not punish these people who take it, but most of it is a small punishment, a little jail or a little bribe or a little penance. Lastly, I want to tell you that when we talk about Bollywood, it is because the torchlight has come on Bollywood. Let's say 10,000 Bollywood people take drugs, it's 0.1%. What happens to the 99%? What happens to the 99% of this country? I'm sure as NCB and as people, that's the larger problem.
Causing a lot of damage.
Or you just want to clean up Deepika.
To the people who don't.
You just want to clean up Deepika and Shraddha. What message will it go? They have never come on national television, films, screen, or social
this whole debate about
drugs. They hide into it. They've never propagated
this whole debate around
idols?
distraction versus malaise. Okay, one by one. Karuna Nandi now. Ms. Nandi, you wanted to come in.
Mr. Mishra's sympathy for the NCB, of course, as his previous organization, is something that one can completely understand. What I can agree with him 100% is that they are hugely understaffed, right? As all our police force, as the rest of our police force is also, but the NCB in particular. What is the task before the NCB? To protect people in India from very, very damaging drugs, and we have a very large country. But what is happening now? Going after some high-profile people for attempting to obtain marijuana. I cannot of a more frivolous waste tax resources, and the fact that it is so leaky and causing so much defamation against such a large number of people, where there is based on no statute whatsoever. Let me be 100% clear about that. That there is no statute that allows them to leak alleged evidence in this manner. That also the presumptions of innocence that are reversed are not reversed with attempts to obtain marijuana. They are reversed in other sorts of instances, but certainly not in this case. And also, as someone else on this panel said, even the potential punishment here could just be a fine. So the fact that everyone's basically going crazy over this is a disservice to the NCB, is a disservice to the work that they are doing in terms of the way that they are leaking their these sorts of chats.
Sure.
That also that they should be focusing on what is important. If they have 50 people, use them wisely.
Okay, fine. Dilip Tahil, quick closing comments. Yeah, one more. Mr. AKashdeep, one moment. Dilip Tahil, I have very limited time. Like the limited resources of NCB, we have limited
with Ms.
time.
Nandi and with Mr. Mishra. And please, Mr. AKashdeep, going to speak
and a
to
sealed
that.
envelope went sealed envelope.
I completely agree with what has been said by Ms. Nandi and Mr. Mishra. A cleanup should happen if that is what is required. But please be careful not to confuse a cleanup and an investigation and trample over human rights and legal rights of citizens. And it becomes very easy when they're movie stars, because long before the NCB takes a decision, there will be people whose reputation will be tarnished, their livelihood will be tampered with, their families will suffer, and then maybe the NCB or any investigative organization will say, oh, but they're not guilty. This is what exactly. There are people who have come on television and said, snatch their endorsements away from them, in no uncertain words. People who are not connected with the film industry are coming in and saying, take the endorsements away from them. They're guilty drug addicts. And this, I'm sorry to say, has been abetted by a very vindictive media. In certain sections. Not you, and that's why I'm here.
I've run out of time in this discussion. Number one.